For the last Sunday in July, you've found the Georgia gang. Topping our agenda today, Brian Kemp in a blowout in the Republican race for governor, a flood of new subpoenas at Atlanta City Hall, and the Cobb County Commission raises property taxes. Some of the stories up for grabs on the Georgia gang.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia gang starts now.
And we're glad you could be with us on Sunday, July 29th. Before we turn to the political news of the week, I'd just like to mention the GDP number under President Donald Trump, 4.1% for the most recent quarter. That is double the growth that typically we saw under President Obama. I think it's great news for the economy. And can you imagine if we ever got past 5% growth? We would be making America great again.
We're booming.
Booming. All right. So now let's go back to politics. The Kathy Willard thought that Brian Kemp might just run away with this Republican primary for governor. You said that based on a couple of polls. I wasn't so sure. And I will just say flat out, nobody saw 70-30 or 69-31 to be precise. Who saw 70-30, Phil?
Well, I was looking at it, and Kathy and I were talking about it last week, and Theron, you saw that Fox 5 Opinion Savvy poll that we reported on last week, and that was an 18-point lead right there. You saw the Cagle declining quickly, and so I didn't know about 70, but I knew it was going to be a big win.
Theron, 40 points between two serious candidates, both of them credible, both of them statewide office holders. Big number.
It was shocking. But you got to give Kemp a lot of credit. He had a great campaign strategy for the runoff. I still believe that once the secret recording came out from Clay Tippins, the Cagle campaign never could really respond appropriately to that. And then when you get an endorsement from a sitting president who's popular with 90% of the Republican voters in Georgia, he just really had a good turnout machine. So what it also showed, I believe, is that when you had about 18,000 less people vote in the runoff, which is not a huge margin. You had a great amount of enthusiasm in this runoff for the governor's race.
Driven by Trump's endorsement, don't you think?
Driven by Trump's endorsement. And so Democrats have got to look at this and say, okay, we've got to match that enthusiasm in November. But I didn't see 70-30, definitely didn't see 69-31, but a big win for Kemp.
There was a number, just very quickly, to Theron's point, 251,000 more votes Kemp got last Tuesday than he got in May.
And then the thing is, and Phil and I were on Fox 5 Tuesday night doing sort of the election analysis, and I think Kemp won every single county except 2 counties. Right. And I hate to say this, but again, Casey Cagle lost his home county of Hall County. He lost it in the primary and he lost it in the runoff. And so a fundamental rule in statewide politics is that you got to win your home county. And so you just saw on this map where Kemp just really dominated in the metro and rural areas.
Well, and also I think the Trump endorsement ginned up the turnout. It was a good turnout for a runoff. We're used to 10%. Some areas had 20%. I also think, without having actually looked it up to prove it, that something unusual happened. People who voted for Casey Cagle the first time around voted for Brian Kemp the second time around. I don't know how many of those there were. Yeah. That doesn't happen very often. And I think Kemp's advertising, which was widely derided initially, where he had the shotgun and the boy named Jake, that advertising got refined, and instead of being shocking, it was self-effacing. It showed a very humble and likable Brian Kemp. I'm not sure we ever saw a likable Casey Cagle. Though Cagle had a record to run on, he didn't do it. You think, Phil? Well,
I think he tried, and the endorsement that Cagle got from Governor Deal was trying to emphasize the excellent Republican business record. But, Brian Kemp has always been very pro-growth, pro-business, so that kind of canceled each other out.
Kathy, you've won and you've lost.
Yes, I have.
I guess we all have in life, but
right.
What did Casey Cagle feel like on Tuesday and Wednesday? A man with all those years of public service, had a great session in the General Assembly, was riding high, and as he put it, the world's most powerful man stepped on him.
Yeah, he got annihilated in this race, and that couldn't have felt good. I'm sure that's partly why he conceded so quickly. He saw the handwriting on the wall. There wasn't any reason to stick around. But, the other thing we should kind of look at is, Hall County has been sort of the seat of power for statewide office with Governor Deal and Casey Cagle and some other candidates who are still doing fine. But this could be an indication that the kind of locus of GOP power doesn't reside in Hall County anymore. It may be somewhere else. I wouldn't venture a guess of where that might be, but I think that that's an interesting shift.
You still have Senator Butch Miller from Gainesville.
We do, and he's the nicest guy down there.
That's right.
I like him.
Keep an eye on Senator Butch Miller.
Yeah.
I'm already hearing rumblings. I know we're going to talk about Lieutenant Governor's race in a minute, but he's going to be a very powerful individual, I think, again, in this upcoming session.
Well, stay right there. The same thing that I just said about Casey Cagle could apply to David Schaefer. Though he's not as well known, he has served in the Republican vineyards for more than 30 years and was the Senate Majority Leader. And he is locked.
Senate Pro Tem.
President Pro Tem. And here he is losing by 1,700 votes to a fellow who's only served 2 terms in the Georgia House. And most people couldn't call his name before this race. What do you think about that?
Well, I think what was clear in that race, and I'm tempted to say it carried over a little bit in the governor's race, but what you saw there is that it was a typical outsider versus an insider vote difference. Duncan ran a very smart outsider campaign. Balfour definitely was an establishment Republican, Republican insider.
Schaefer.
I'm sorry, Schaefer. Sorry, I said it. So Schaefer
Balfour was too, but
So Schaefer definitely was an insider. Duncan ran. So I think you saw a lot of people who went to the polls and voted for the governor, and I would really like to see the breakdown in the lieutenant governor's race. But I think Kemp's turnout really hurt Schaefer because Kemp brought out a lot of these Trump loyalists, and I think a lot of them voted for Duncan.
However, going back to you need to carry your home county, if you look at the numbers where David Schaefer's state Senate base is in Gwinnett County, he hemorrhaged horribly. If he'd even gotten half in Gwinnett County of what he got back in May, he would be the nominee for lieutenant governor. I'd never seen someone in modern Georgia political history get 49% the first round and the second round just get totally wiped out by 22 points. That's amazing.
All right, let's try to, we're going to look ahead at November a little bit, but we've got months to do that. But the fact is that on Tuesday night, or at least by Wednesday morning, the National Republican Governors Association was already running spots against Stacey Abrams, the Democratic nominee. And she, in turn, is running spots to establish her as a likable person and command of the issues. It's just what's to come. We should look at a couple of other races. Congress in the 7th District, which is mostly Gwinnett County and some of Forsyth. Kathy, you nailed that one. Carolyn Bordeaux edged David Kim, professor at Georgia State. David Kim is an immigrant who really ran a far left campaign. It almost made Carolyn Bordeaux look like a moderate. She's not.
Well, I think Carolyn is pretty moderate, but I think she's well schooled in the issues, and she's an excellent candidate. She'd make a wonderful member of Congress. She ran a good race. And I think that this election is going to be hugely volatile. You know, you mentioned Schaefer not pulling Gwinnett County. Gwinnett County's changed. If he had run for his seat again, he might not have won. And I think anyone who bets against a woman in this election is not playing the odds right.
Well, and you're right.
Well, that's going to be a
and just to wrap that up, in the 6th District, where Phil and I live, we now have a choice between Lucy McBath, a single-issue gun candidate, and Karen Handel. And it's going to be a campaign decided in great part by outside money, probably on both sides. Not John Ossoff type money.
Outside money and turnout.
Yeah, there it is. All right, and we've got to get out. All right, we'll get out. Stay with us while we reorganize.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
We'll come back with a political notebook a little bit later in the broadcast, but now turning to the other news. Once again, a flock of subpoenas hit Atlanta City Hall. B.J. Pack, the U.S. Attorney, still widening his investigation of apparent corruption at City Hall, this time looking at the way cabinet officers under Kasim Reed left office with huge payouts for unaccrued vacation and perhaps even sick leave, not clear on that. So far, $259,000 in payments to outgoing city officials has been accounted for. There is a question of legality here, isn't there, Theron?
Look, I think that this process, this investigation is continuous. And I think one of the things that I want to point out is that the Bottoms administration is fully cooperating with the federal investigators. The bottom line is that it's really going to be really interesting to see what was actually legal and what was illegal. The optics are always sort of the concern, but I think that what they're trying to really do is go on this fact-finding mission to make sure that how city employees get sick leave, how they get vacation time, how they continue to get payouts, which has been done for decades at City Hall. Was it above the law, and was it actually, in concert with the city charter?
Kathy, you were probably like we were a couple of years ago, totally shocked at the huge payout that went to the former police chief, George Turner. Mm-hmm. That was, I forget the amount right off the top of my head, but it was 6 figures, wasn't it? And what it implied was the man had never taken a day off for a day of vacation. And I thought maybe that would put an end to this stuff, but it seems to have escalated.
Well, I don't know if it's escalated, but it's continued. And I think that one really has to look back at the previous city council to say, at what point did you get a warning and then not change the policy, right? If mm-hmm. if we come to the end of this this investigation and we conclude, well, that was still an allowable thing, then you really have to say you guys aren't doing your job. And I think for the new council, they have to really be thinking about when you get these signs, do something about it. Don't just approve it or just sit around and wait.
I agree. I think it goes back to the city council was asleep at the wheel. Some of these new city council members, I hope, are getting a lesson in this cesspool of waste that's been going on, constant headlines. And then, of course, you had former Mayor Kasim Reed's chief of staff, Candace Bird. The news just came out that she just blew $60,000 in the final months of the Reed administration traveling around. Again, more waste.
Was this the I-Team's work?
That was Dale Russell's work here on Fox 5. Again, I hope that new Mayor Bottoms is going to get to the bottom of it, because there are some problems with open records requests with this new administration that are being stonewalled from what my sources are saying.
And I think you're going to see more on the line of, pardon me, Theron, the personal expenses of all these cabinet officers are going to come out in this. And let's not forget, public officials locally have gone to prison for misusing their P cards, their city-issued credit cards. Yeah. So there could be a lot of this lurking out there too for the U.S. Attorney to find.
Yeah, and I think I want to correct something I said earlier, not above the law, but above board. I want to make sure for our viewers. But I think in the case of Chief Turner, I don't want him to get a bad reputation. When you're the police chief, you're on 24 hours. I mean, if a murder happens, if someone calls police for a burglary. So I think that he accrued all of this time because he's a 24-hour chief. And so I think that it was a lot of people who looked at his payout. He deserved it. He earned that money. And so I don't want him to kind of get caught up in this sort of this narrative. But I do think, Phil, that the Bottoms administration, and I don't even have to talk to sources. I mean, you can just see how now the AJC and other papers are just rolling out this information every week. Part of that is that they now have the staff to do so. But the other part of it is that the Bottoms administration is definitely cooperating the best that they can with these open records requests.
All right, let's switch over to Cobb County, because there were two major stories in Cobb County this past week. Number one, the commission met on Wednesday to raise property taxes. Phil, we've seen it coming. Mike Boyce has actually kind of campaigned for a property tax increase ever since he got elected. But the vote was 3-2 to raise the taxes. Bob Weatherford, who was defeated in Tuesday night's primary, came and voted for the tax increase as a lame duck.
That's right. He was defeated by Kelly Gambrill, who ran on a record of fiscal conservatism, pledges of fiscal conservatism. It was a disgrace that Weatherford just went ahead and went against the people. This is maybe the end right now of fiscal conservatism in Cobb County. I think, yes, Chairman Boyce, as you mentioned, did this, but it goes back to the Braves deal. It goes back to...
You can't blame it all on the Braves deal, do you think?
I think you might be able to if you start looking at the numbers that Cobb's been losing, and I think that was the end of fiscal conservatism.
$400 million, Dick, is what Cobb County is going to be paying for that whole... Now, I like the Battery, I like the new stadium, that's not the issue here. And then you had the announcement just the other day of this new development in the Battery with a giant tax breaks and then they're raising taxes?
Well, but that's the ThyssenKrupp deal that Governor Deal announced. That's the major elevator manufacturer in the world. It's kind of cool. They're going to build Cobb County's tallest building, and
Right.
it's an elevator test tower.
Right.
Wouldn't that be kind of fun?
But you see the point
of
of giving big breaks there. That's a big controversy in
but, you
Cobb.
know, yeah, but those tax breaks, I can't believe I'm saying this, do pay off in the long run.
Not necessarily. Certainly to sports teams they don't. That's been proven
Well,
over.
But the sports teams in this case, this isn't a baseball stadium, it's a real estate venture, the Battery. That's a big real estate play. It's Braves
But
properties.
the point is that you were giving the taxpayer
Yeah, they
money
get
to
tax
the
breaks
Braves.
up front, but then their tax burden increases with each passing year, and after 10 years, the county will get the full
It's all in
revenue.
how you do the package of breaks.
The county got in a hole. The other thing that we haven't ever talked about on this broadcast that I'm aware is Cobb County uses water bills, people's water bills, to pay into the general budget of the city. Their charter allows that. So they've been out of whack for some time if the water customers are paying for the police or the fire or the libraries, right?
Well, Commissioner Bob Ott, to his credit, has been outlining some cuts in government, which you're supposed to be looking at, but he didn't have the votes.
Well, I
Okay.
tell you, in Atlanta, you can't dip over into the water bills to pay into the
I
general
know.
fund.
Wow.
So, you know,
No,
maybe
you
they
can't
ought to
do it
give
in
us
the
a
cab.
call and we'll tell them how to
No,
fix
you
that.
can't do it in the cab either. All right, when we let me just emphasize about that ThyssenKrupp project in Cobb County. Not only will it be the tallest building in the county, but it's going to bring 650 jobs and $2 million in investment. So any way you look at it, that's good for Cobb. They ought to have their budget straightened out, right? Come on, isn't Boyce a retired Marine?
Well, you know, I think it's
Whip it
all
in order. Let's
it's
get it
all
in line here.
priorities. It's all priorities. What you want to do.
All right. When we come back, we'll step back into the political arena and tie up some loose ends from a long, long primary season. Right back.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
And let's go back to politics and the governor's race and the long 9-week runoff. And Theron, you mentioned something that I think bears a little further discussion, and that is the almost unprecedented act of the President of the United States intervening in a Republican primary, countering the endorsement of a sitting Republican governor. We mentioned that. Those facts are known, but when did that ever happen?
It was very bizarre. And as I went around this past week and talked to a lot of insiders, people on both the Kemp campaign and the Cagle campaign, and even just former GOP campaigners, they had never seen a sitting president, either party, go against a sitting governor in one of the most, I think, the capital of the South, red states in Georgia. And so, Phil was telling us that maybe, Governor Deal broke the neutrality rule when he said he wasn't going to get involved. But it just shows you that this president, who, by the way, I think it paid off for Kemp, we just can't miss this fact. That's never happened in Georgia before.
I reached through my memory bank, which is extensive after all these years. The only sort of analogous thing I can think of is cases in the Deep South. For example, when David Duke was running as a Republican in Louisiana, everybody condemned him and supported his opponent.
Well, you had,
but I don't think it was a sitting president.
President Roosevelt getting involved in Georgia political races. It is rare, but I think this is the 21st century, and times have changed since President Obama had his favorites. Donald Trump has his favorites. They're going to weigh in. Social media has changed a lot of this too. And again, I think it does go back. I'm always wondering if Governor Deal didn't break his neutrality pledge, if there was a need to kind of have the president get involved. But we talked earlier in the broadcast with Cagle's poll numbers going down. I think that they watch those polls up in the White House too.
Well, Kathy hit on something a minute ago, and that's the point I want to make. You were talking about leadership shifting out of Hall County, and where does it go? And I would say that it goes, in this instance, to Senator David Perdue and his cousin, former Governor Sonny Perdue, because they played a part in this in some way or fashion or form, making it the unprecedented event that it was. And now on the Democratic side, I really don't like what I see coming. George Soros has given the state Democratic Party $1 million. He's the billionaire from Hungary. And I just why can't Georgia elections be settled by Georgians?
Because we
Stacey
need,
Abrams able to raise money.
because we need campaign finance reform. Look, the Republicans have their own dark money. The Koch brothers, are down here putting money in. There's lots of other people that are putting money. The fact is this is going to be an unprecedented election, and there will be an unprecedented amount of money coming in from both sides.
Yeah.
But
Right.
you certainly can't say one side
Dick,
got
those
it and the other
those
one
days
doesn't.
are gone with the wind. Both sides have to get money. I don't call it dark money. I call it money that fosters speech on both sides. And I know PACs can abuse it. We've talked about this. There can be character assassination and all of this. But the dirty secret that the left has, they claim they want transparency. They want to target donors on the opposite side so they can boycott them and ruin them and hurt them. So I like Citizens United, the Supreme Court decision that protects donors from harassment, especially from the radical left.
But one of the things that's interesting is that as we are, sitting here, Stacey Abrams is on a jobs tour across Georgia.
Right.
And one of the things that I'm proud to see from her campaign.
Hey, she's on the cover of Time magazine.
She's
too.
on the
Did you
cover of
notice
Time
that?
magazine. I mean, that is wonderful. I mean, it's the South issue.
Does anyone read that anymore?
I
A
think
lot
it
of
would have
people,
meant more 10 years ago than
No,
it does
I
now.
think millions and millions of people read it. But I think the thing that I would say to the Abrams campaign is this, and Kathy knows this. She's got to run a Georgia-specific campaign. Don't let these Republicans loop her nationalize her with Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi and Soros.
Well, they're already doing it.
It's got to be an all-of-the-above campaign. She can't go away from her base of support, which got her to this point. But she must define herself right away.
Isn't she going to bring in Bernie Sanders, though, and all these people?
So to see her around Georgia and places in southeast Georgia and Hinesville, Georgia, talking about job creation and working her way back to the metro area, I think that's a very smart decision. But I'm waiting to see what is going to be her big paid advertisement in the next week or so to really come out and set the tone for this election.
Well, her ads right now are quite good.
Yeah.
I mean, they really are. They're all business. But the Republican ads show Hillary Clinton saying, "I'm so happy Stacey Abrams got the nomination in Georgia." All right, we've got to get out. We'll come back with winners and losers. Guess what? We didn't talk about Jason Spencer, that idiot from South Georgia. And I am so glad
How about
that
he's a
Please
loser for all
let
of
me
this?
make him be the loser.
Well, all right, you can do it.
It's unanimous. It's unanimous.
All those in favor.
All right.
Say aye.
When we come back, winners and losers.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
And the next sounds you hear will be the sounds of shotguns blasting away at Jason Spencer of Woodbine, Georgia. Phil, I'll start with you. You can go in any direction you like.
Well, thank you. I think we just said in the last segment that he is the loser, the representative that did that crazy Sacha Baron Cohen video. I think he joins the pantheon of Dumb and Dumber after Congressman Hank Johnson with thinking that Guam would tip over. But anyhow, the winners obviously Brian Kemp, the GOP gubernatorial nominee. Brad Raffensperger, we didn't mention, is the Republican Secretary of State. Another winner, hey, the roof is working over at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. That's
about
great.
8 minutes and 10 seconds. Pretty cool.
That's right. And my losers are those two Roswell cops. You remember they pulled over somebody and they just flipped a coin to decide if they're going to be arrested or not. That's a disgrace. They were fired. Good.
That was good, Phil. I'm glad you made them your loser.
All right, Kathy, go ahead.
Well, I think Georgia Democrats are big winners this week because they've really settled the field now for their statewide slate. It's as diverse as it can possibly be. There's something for everybody to love. There's somebody for everybody to get behind. It's a smart, policy-oriented group of folks, and I'm just as proud as I can be of what our slate looks like in November.
All right, you don't have a loser or Jason Spencer, of course. But you
Yeah,
did
that was just so hard to
right.
get past. I can't think of anything
I got a
else.
few winners. Otha Thornton, we didn't talk about him. He won
Right.
the runoff for state school superintendent, so I want to give him a big shout out. We also had some House races. We had El Mahdi Holly in districts 111 and Jessica Walden in districts 144 who won their runoffs, Democratic runoffs. Also, Lorraine Cochran Johnson in DeKalb County defeated Commissioner Adams. Commissioner Adams will continue to serve out his term, but that was definitely a shocker in DeKalb. Letitia Deere Jackson also won DeKalb County Superior Court in Stone Mountain, and Kevin Farmer in Fulton. And then my loser's definitely Jason Spencer for this unbelievable comments that he made on the show. And lastly, I've been holding off for weeks on this, but I'm happy to see Julio Jones, who I think is the best wide receiver in the league, report to camp, and the Falcons need to pay him as much as he deserves for this 1-year deal.
Boy, that ended with a whimper, didn't it? I really thought he was holding out. And
Well, he held out just enough to get a 1-year deal, but I'm happy that
It was a close call.
Yeah, but I'm happy the
but
Falcons.
he gets
in
his
the league.
big payday after this season in 2019.
Yeah,
when they'll have to rework his deal, and that'll be
Correct.
his last contract.
But I'm glad Julio's back on the field.
Well, and staying on the sports theme, then we should mention that this afternoon, I guess Atlanta's probably all-time favorite athlete, along with Hank Aaron, Chipper Jones, goes into the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York. And who doesn't like Chipper? Unless it's one of his ex-wives. But I mean, seriously, Chipper is he's just a guy everybody likes. He's just down home in the country, and he goes into the Hall of Fame. I'd like to be in Cooperstown to see that. And finally, Governor Deal keeps bringing these companies into Georgia. It's great stuff. See you next week on the Georgia Gang.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program.